wind howled like a wounded beast, tearing through the Alaskan wilderness with icy claws. Snowflakes the size of quarters swirled in the air, stinging exposed skin like tiny needles. Warren Pierce exhaled sharply, watching his breath form a thick cloud in the sub-zero air as he stacked another log on the fire. The flames crackled hungrily, casting flickering shadows across the rough-hewn walls of his remote cabin. Outside, the storm raged with increasing fury, the kind of storm that could kill a man in hours if he wasn't prepared. Warren knew these storms well. A grizzled survivalist in his late 50s, he'd spent nearly 3 decades living alone in this harsh wilderness, learning its moods and respecting its power. His hands, calloused from years of chopping wood and skinning game, moved automatically as he prepared for another long night trapped indoors by nature's fury. The radio had been crackling with warnings about this storm system for days, the worst blizzard to hit the region in years. A sudden noise cut through the wind's relentless howl. Warren froze, his survival instincts kicking in. It wasn't the creak of settling logs or the groan of wind-battered trees. This was different, a scratching, scraping sound coming from his front door. His blood ran cold. In all his years in the wilderness, he'd never had an animal bold enough to approach his cabin during a storm. Slowly, cautiously, Warren reached for his rifle, leaning against the stone fireplace. The scratching came again, more insistent now, accompanied by something that sounded almost like a whimper. His brow furrowed as he crept toward the door, his boots silent on the worn wooden floorboards. Peering through the small, ice-encrusted window beside the door, Warren's breath caught in his throat. 2 massive wolves stood on his porch, their thick winter coats matted with snow and ice. The larger one, a male with a distinctive black-tipped tail, stood protectively in front of a slightly smaller female, whose golden eyes burned with a mixture of fear and determination. Their breath came in ragged, visible puffs as they stood in the punishing wind. But what struck Warren most was what they weren't doing. They weren't snarling. They weren't attacking. They weren't behaving like the apex predators he knew them to be. Instead, the female took a limping step forward, her injured paw leaving a faint bloody smear on the snow-dusted planks. The male remained close beside her, his intelligent eyes locking onto Warren's through the glass, with an intensity that sent shivers down the survivalist's spine. "Help us," their silent gaze seemed to beg. Warren's hand hovered over the door latch, his mind racing. Everything he knew about wildlife, everything 30 years in the Alaskan wilderness had taught him, screamed that this was wrong. Wolves didn't seek out humans. They certainly didn't ask for help. They were wild, unpredictable, dangerous. Yet, the female swayed slightly, her strength clearly failing. The male nudged her gently with his muzzle, a gesture so tender it made Warren's throat tighten. Then the big wolf turned back to the door and did something that shattered Warren's understanding of nature. He whined, not the aggressive growl of a predator, but the soft, pleading sound of a creature in desperate need. Warren's fingers trembled as they closed around the cold metal latch. His pulse pounded in his ears, louder than the storm outside. This could be the worst mistake of his life. Against every instinct, he opened the door. "Come in," he whispered, stepping back to give the wild creature space. The wolves hesitated only a moment before crossing the threshold into the warm cabin, their powerful bodies moving with cautious grace. The female collapsed almost immediately near the roaring fire, her ribs visible beneath her frost-laced fur. The male stood guard over her, his golden eyes never leaving Warren, watching, waiting. Warren closed the door against the howling storm, his mind reeling. What kind of wolves beg a human for help? And what could possibly have driven them to do so? The cabin's heavy wooden door clicked shut behind them, sealing out the storm's fury. Warren stood frozen, his back pressed against the rough-hewn planks, as he watched the two wolves explore his home with cautious curiosity. The male, Fang, Warren's mind named him, kept his muscular body positioned between Warren and the injured female, his golden eyes reflecting the firelight like molten coins. The female, Luna, collapsed near the stone hearth with a shuddering sigh, her sides heaving. Up close, Warren could see the true extent of her suffering. Her thick winter coat was patchy in places, revealing angry red skin beneath. Ice crystals clung to her whiskers, and when she lifted her head to sniff the air, Warren noticed her nostrils were cracked and bleeding from the cold. Warren's survival instincts warred with an unexpected surge of compassion. He'd seen wolves before, at a distance, stalking caribou across the frozen tundra or howling from distant ridges. But never like this, never vulnerable, never trusting. The cabin's warmth seemed to affect the wolves immediately. Fang's ears twitched at the sound of popping sap in the fireplace, his black lips curling slightly to reveal gleaming white canines before he relaxed again. Luna stretched her front paws toward the heat, her claws clicking against the stone hearth. A soft whimper escaped her throat as the warmth reached her injured paw. Warren moved slowly, telegraphing his every motion. He grabbed two thick wool blankets from the cedar chest near his bed, the ones his late wife had woven years ago during their first winter in the wilderness. The scent of cedar and wood smoke clung to the fabric as he unfolded them. "Easy now," Warren murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He'd used this tone with spooked horses back in his ranch days. Low, calm, non-threatening. "Just gonna get you warmed up." Fang's ears swiveled forward at the sound, his intense gaze tracking Warren's every move. When Warren knelt and extended the blanket toward Luna, Fang stiffened, a deep growl rumbling in his massive chest. Warren froze. One wrong move and those powerful jaws could crush bone. He'd seen what wolves could do to a moose calf. This was no domesticated dog. Then something remarkable happened. Luna lifted her head and made a soft, chuffing sound at Fang. The big male's ears flicked back, his growl dying in his throat. After a tense moment, he took a single step back, though his eyes never left Warren. Heart pounding, Warren carefully draped the blanket over Luna's shivering form. The female wolf sighed deeply, burrowing into the warmth with surprising grace for such a large predator. Her golden eyes met Warren's for a brief, electric moment before fluttering closed. Warren exhaled sharply, suddenly aware he'd been holding his breath. He spread the second blanket a few feet away, and offering to Fang. The proud male sniffed it suspiciously before circling twice and settling down, his body still taut with readiness. The storm outside intensified, wind screaming through the cabin's eaves like a living thing. Warren moved to the small kitchen area, his boots creaking on the old floorboards. He filled a battered metal bowl with water from the hand pump and set it near the wolves. Fang was on his feet instantly, his nose working as he sniffed the offering. After a moment's hesitation, he lapped at the water eagerly, his pink tongue flashing. Luna roused herself enough to drink too, her movements weak but determined. Warren's stomach twisted at their obvious dehydration. How long had they been out in that storm? What could have driven two healthy wolves to seek human help? He rummaged through his cold storage and came up with some frozen caribou meat. "Not much," he muttered as he set it near the fire to thaw, "but it's something." As the meat warmed, filling the cabin with a gamey scent, Warren studied his unexpected guess. Fang was a magnificent specimen, easily 120 pounds of pure muscle, wrapped in a thick winter coat of gray and black. His amber eyes held an intelligence that was almost human, constantly assessing, calculating. Luna was slightly smaller, but no less impressive, her golden brown fur marked with distinctive black streaks along her flanks. Even injured, There was a quiet dignity to her movements, a regal bearing that spoke of her place as alpha female. The meat thawed enough to cut, and Warren used his hunting knife to slice it into manageable chunks. He tossed a piece toward Fang, who caught it mid-air with a snap of powerful jaws. Luna ate more delicately, taking the offered meat gently from Warren's outstretched palm. Her tongue brushed his fingers, warm, rough, and surprisingly soft. Warren's breath caught at the unexpected contact. In that moment, some ancient barrier between man and beast seemed to thin just a little. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, an uneasy truce held between three unlikely companions. Warren settled into his worn armchair, his rifle within easy reach but untouched. He knew he should be afraid, knew this went against every survival instinct. But as he watched the wolves rest by his fire, their chests rising and falling in steady rhythm, all he felt was a strange, swelling protectiveness. Whatever had brought these wolves to his door, whatever danger they were fleeing, he would keep them safe, at least until the storm passed, at least until he understood why the most feared predators in the Arctic had come to him, of all people, for help. The cabin groaned under the storm's assault, its timber bones creaking like an old schooner in rough seas. Warren jerked awake from his armchair vigil, disoriented by the fire's dying embers and the unfamiliar weight pressing against his legs. Fang lay stretched across his boots, the wolf's massive head resting on his paws, ears twitching at every gust rattling the window panes. Warren's breath caught. A wild Arctic wolf was using him as a footrest. Then he heard it. A howl, not the usual chorus of the pack that sometimes echoed across the valley. This was singular, mournful, and far too close. Fang was on his feet in an instant, lips peeled back in a silent snarl. Luna lifted her head from the hearth, her golden eyes wide with something Warren couldn't decipher. Fear, recognition. The howl came again, closer now. Warren's survivalist mind cataloged the details. Adult male, not calling to hunt, calling to find. Fang suddenly whirled toward the door, his claws scoring the hardwood. He let out a soft whine that raised the hairs on Warren's neck. It was the same sound he'd made when begging for shelter. Warren grabbed his rifle. "What is it, boy?" "You know that wolf?" Luna staggered upright, her injured paw held aloft. She limped to the window, fogging the glass with her breath as she peered into the blizzard's whiteout. Then Warren saw it too, a shadow moving at the tree line. Not the loping gait of a hunting wolf, but the stumbling progress of something wounded or sick. The radio crackled to life with a burst of static. Widespread power outages. Wildlife officials report. Missing research team. Last seen near. Fang slammed his body against the door with a force that shook the cabin. "Damn it!" Warren lunged to stop him, but Luna was faster. She blocked Fang's path with a guttural growl that vibrated through Warren's boots. The two wolves locked eyes in a silent battle of wills, until Fang dropped his tail and whined. Warren's fingers tightened on the rifle. Something was very wrong. These weren't just wolves seeking shelter. They were running from something. The shadow at the tree line coalesced into a third wolf. Emaciated, its fur matted with what looked like, was that blood? It collapsed just yards from the cabin. Fang howled, a sound so full of grief it raised goose flesh on Warren's arms. Luna pressed against his legs, trembling. Warren made his decision. He shrugged into his parka, the wolf's eyes tracking his every move. "Stay," he ordered, as if they could understand. When he opened the door, the storm's icy fingers clawed at his face. The fallen wolf lifted its head, and Warren froze. Around its neck hung a shredded radio collar, and clutched in its teeth was a scrap of orange fabric. Human fabric. Warren's breath came in ragged clouds as he knelt beside the fallen wolf. The animal's ribs heaved under its matted fur, its yellow teeth still clenched around the scrap of orange fabric. Up close, the collar wasn't just damaged, it had been shredded with deliberate, vicious intent. "Easy, big fella," Warren murmured, his parka hood filling with windblown snow. The wolf's eyes rolled wildly, showing whites like a spooked horse. That's when Warren saw the numbers tattooed inside its ear. K217, research animals. A memory surfaced, last month's news report about wildlife biologists tracking a wolf pack near Denali. The radio static suddenly made terrible sense. Fang and Luna crowded behind him, their body heat warming his back. Fang sniffed at the fallen wolf's muzzle, then let out a sound Warren had never heard from a wolf before, a keening wail that raised the hair on his neck. The injured wolf convulsed, its jaws spasmed open, releasing the orange fabric into the snow. Warren's stomach lurched when he recognized the material, the same high-vis nylon used in expedition parkas. Christ almighty, he scooped up the scrap. Frozen blood crackled between his fingers. Luna suddenly stiffened, her ears swiveled forward like radar dishes, tracking something beyond the storm's howl. Fang's hackles rose in a ridge down his spine. Then Warren heard it too, the distant whump-whump of helicopter blades. Not the steady rhythm of rescue choppers. This was the erratic stutter of a machine flying blind through a storm. The fallen wolf struggled to rise, its claws scrabbling on ice. Warren made a decision that defied every survival instinct. "We're taking him in." Moving fast, he shrugged out of his parka and wrapped it around the trembling animal. The wolf didn't resist as Warren lifted its front half, Fang instinctively supporting the hindquarters with his powerful shoulders. Together, they half-dragged, half-carried the injured creature toward the cabin. Luna darted ahead, her nose working the air. At the threshold, she suddenly blocked their path with a snarl. Warren followed her gaze to the blood trail they'd left in the snow, a crimson arrow pointing straight to his door. The helicopter sound grew louder. "Inside! Now!" Warren kicked the door shut behind them, plunging them into firelit shadows. The new wolf collapsed on the bearskin rug, its breathing shallow. Fang immediately began licking its matted fur, while Luna stationed herself at the window like a sentry. Warren examined the radio collar under the kerosene lamp. The shredded edges weren't torn. They showed clean cuts, human cuts. Someone had used a knife to remove the tracking unit. The orange fabric scrap held worse secrets. Sewn into the lining was a plastic biohazard bag containing a single folded note. Warren's hands shook as he smoothed it open to reveal 3 words in smeared ink. "They're not wolves outside." The helicopter's searchlight speared through the blizzard, painting the cabin walls with moving bars of light. Luna's reflection in the window showed her lips curled back from her teeth, not in a snarl, but in what looked like fear. The helicopter's searchlight swept across the cabin again, throwing grotesque shadows of wolf and man against the log walls. Warren pressed his back against the rough timber, the note crumpled in his fist. "They're not wolves." The words burned in his mind as he watched the silhouette of the chopper tilt dangerously low through the storm. Luna's whine snapped his attention to the injured newcomer. The wolf, if it was a wolf, lay panting on the rug, its flank rising in ragged spasms. Fang worked tirelessly, licking matted blood from its fur with surprising gentleness. Warren knelt beside them, the biohazard bag crinkling in his grip. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he muttered, reaching for the wolf's collar. The moment his fingers touched the clasp, the animal's eyes flew open, glowing an unnatural electric blue for one heart-stopping second before fading back to normal canine amber. Warren recoiled. "What in God's name?" A thud shook the cabin. Then another. Something heavy had landed on the roof. Fang spun toward the ceiling with a sound halfway between a growl and a whimper. Luna flattened herself against the floorboards, her tail tucked tight. The injured wolf struggled to rise, its lips peeling back from teeth that looked wrong. Too long, too sharp, more like a big cat's fangs than a wolf's. The radio crackled to life again, this time with a voice cutting through the static. Repeat, specimen K217 is property of Denali Biotech. Lethal force authorized. Warren's blood turned to ice. He'd heard of Denali Biotech, some private research outfit that had moved into the old military testing grounds north of Fairbanks. Government contracts, no questions asked. Another thud from the roof. Something was moving up there. Luna suddenly darted to Warren's gun cabinet, scratching at the locked door with surprising purpose. When he didn't move fast enough, she grabbed his sleeve in her teeth and dragged him toward it. "You want me to?" Warren fumbled with the keys. The moment the cabinet swung open, Luna nosed past hunting rifles and grabbed the antique 4570 lever action in her jaws, the one loaded with armor-piercing rounds Warren kept for grisly defense. Fang positioned himself between the door and the injured wolf, his hackles raised in a ridge of fury. The newcomer had managed to stand now, its strange teeth bared toward the ceiling, where claw marks suddenly appeared in the wood. Long, deep gouges that no natural animal could make. Warren jacked around into the chamber as the first black-clad figure rappelled down past the window, its visored helmet reflecting the firelight. The biohazard symbol on its shoulder patch matched the bag from the orange fabric. Luna pressed against Warren's leg, her body trembling not with fear but with what felt like anticipation. The door exploded inward. "Down!" Warren roared. The wolves moved as one, not away from the threat, but into it, their bodies flowing with unnatural grace between the armed figures. Fang's leap carried him straight at the lead operative's throat, while Luna positioned herself protectively over the injured one. Warren's rifle barked once, twice. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, he heard growls that didn't sound canine, screams that didn't sound human, and beneath it all, the steady, rhythmic beep of the injured wolf's collar suddenly reactivating. When the emergency lantern flared back to life, Warren found himself staring at 3 wolves ringed around him, and 5 very dead men in tactical gear whose necks had been torn out with surgical precision. The injured wolf limped forward, its blue eyes glowing faintly as it dropped something at Warren's boots. A military dog tag stamped with the Denali Biotech logo and a single word: hybrid. Outside, the helicopter's engine coughed and died, its spinning blades throwing sparks as it crashed into the distant trees. The resulting explosion painted the snow crimson. Fang licked blood from his jaws and looked at Warren with an intelligence no wild animal should possess. "Well," Warren whispered, picking up the dog tag, "guess we've got some hunting to do." The explosion's afterglow painted the snowdrifts in pulsing shades of orange as Warren crouched in the cabin doorway, his breath coming in ragged clouds. The wolves stood beside him, Fang's muzzle still dripping crimson, Luna's golden eyes reflecting the distant fire, and the injured newcomer, who Warren had started calling Ghost for his pale fur and eerie blue eyes, leaning heavily against the doorframe. Warren turned the dog tag over in his gloved fingers. Hybrid. The word burned in his mind. "All right," he muttered, strapping on his snowshoes. "We move now, before more come." The wolves didn't hesitate. Fang shouldered past him into the storm, his nose working the wind like a bloodhound. Luna stayed at Warren's side, her warm shoulder pressing against his thigh as they stepped into the white hell. Ghost brought up the rear, limping but determined. 2 hours earlier, the dying researcher's journal had been hidden in Ghost's collar, a watertight pouch containing 12 pages of cramped handwriting. Warren had read it by firelight while the wolves watched, their intelligent eyes tracking every flicker of his expression. Day 47. The Phase 3 subjects show 18% increased cognitive function and pack coordination. Military observers are pleased, too pleased. Day 62, K217, Ghost, is the only one who hasn't turned violent during testing. They're scheduling him for termination tomorrow. God help me, I'm setting him free. The last entry was smeared with what looked like blood. They know what I did. If you're reading this, run. The wolves aren't the experiment, we are. The serum was never meant for them. The rest was illegible. Present. The storm swallowed them whole. Warren navigated by instinct and the occasional pressure of Luna's nose against his elbow when he strayed off course. They were heading northeast, toward the old Denali testing grounds, toward answers. Fang suddenly froze, his ears swiveling forward. A new sound cut through the wind, mechanical whining. Down, Warren hissed, dragging Ghost behind a snowdrift. The drones came in a swarm, black metal insects with glowing red eyes, scanning the terrain in grid patterns. One passed so close, Warren could see the Denali Biotech logo stamped on its undercarriage. Luna pressed against him, her body trembling not from cold, but from some deeper fear. Fang's lips peeled back in a silent snarl as a drone spotlight swept over their hiding place and kept moving. Warren exhaled. They're not scanning for heat, he realized. They're looking for... Ghost suddenly stiffened. His blue eyes glowed faintly as a low-frequency vibration filled the air, a sound no human could hear. The drones immediately changed course, zooming toward the source. Sonar tags, Warren breathed. They're tracking you. Fang made a chuffing sound that was unmistakably agreement. The bunker. They found it just before dawn, a concrete monstrosity half buried in snow, its entrance guarded by motion-activated turrets. Dead wolves hung from the perimeter fence, their corpses wired with blinking devices. Warning signs showed the International Biohazard symbol over a wolf silhouette. Ghost whimpered, his claws digging into Warren's parka sleeve. Then the speakers crackled to life. Specimens K09 and K15, boomed a mechanized voice. Return to extraction point immediately. Your handler is waiting. Fang, K09, and Luna, K015, exchanged a look that carried centuries of meaning. Warren's blood ran cold. You understand that? Luna licked his hand once. Then Fang threw back his head and howled, a sound that shook snow from the trees and sent the turrets swiveling wildly. The doors blew open. Hunt, Fang seemed to say, and the wolves went to war. The bunker doors hissed shut behind them with a sound like a tomb ceiling. Warren's boots slipped on something wet, not snow, blood. Old stains formed a grisly trail down the concrete corridor, illuminated by flickering emergency lights. Fang and Luna moved like shadows ahead, their paws making no sound. Ghost limped beside Warren, his blue eyes casting faint bioluminescent glows that revealed words spray-painted on the walls. Project Cerberus. Phase 4, initiated to terminate all rogue assets. A scream echoed from deep within the facility, not animal, human. Warren tightened his grip on the rifle. What the hell did they make here? Lab 17B. The dissection table held the answer. A wolf carcass, or what had been a wolf, splayed open with military precision. Its skull was twice normal size, the brain exposed and studded with microchips. The claws were elongated, retractable, and the teeth. Jesus Christ, Warren gagged. The canines were replaced with what looked like surgical steel implants, their edges serrated for maximum tearing. Loon nosed open a nearby laptop. The screen flickered to life, displaying a video log dated 3 days prior. A haggard scientist in a biohazard suit faced the camera. Final entry, the Alpha cohort has escaped containment. They're exhibiting pack coordination beyond predictive models, and they remember, God help us, They remember every test, every procedure. Gunfire cut him off. The camera caught a blur of black fur before the feed died. Connor the holding pen's ghost suddenly bolted down a side corridor, his claws clicking on the grated metal floor. Warren followed and froze at the nightmarish sight. Dozens of cages lined the walls. Most stood empty, their locks melted by what looked like acid, but the last few held. More hybrids, Warren whispered. These wolves were different, smaller, their eyes dull where ghosts glowed. They cowered at the back of their cages, whining. One had human-like hands where its front paws should be. Fang let out a sound that wasn't quite a growl, more like grief. He pressed his muzzle against one cage, and the shriveled creature inside licked his nose weakly. A new sound cut through the silence. Boots. Lots of them. Luna's ears flattened. She grabbed Warren's sleeve and dragged him toward a ventilation shaft just as the first flashlight beams rounded the corner. Breathe the truth. The shaft opened into a control room overlooking a massive arena-like chamber. Warren's blood turned to ice at what he saw below. A battle ring. Blood stained the concrete floor in abstract patterns. The walls were scarred with claw marks, some at heights no normal wolf could reach. And in the center, a steel post with heavy chains, the kind used to restrain attack dogs. This was no research facility, Warren realized. This was a training ground. Ghost pressed against the observation window, his blue eyes reflecting the horror below. On the glass, someone had scribbled in dry erase marker, "Subjects exceeding cognitive parameters, pack bonding, overriding training protocols, termination protocol." Engaged, Fang's growl vibrated through Warren's boots. On the monitor bank, security feeds showed armed teams fanning through the corridors, hunting them. Then Warren noticed one screen displaying a map, with a red X over his cabin. "They knew," he breathed. "They sent you to me." Luna licked his hand. "Once, twice? Yes?" The intercom crackled. "All teams converge on Sector 9. The Alpha cohort has breached Cerberus containment. Lethal force authorized." Fang's teeth gleamed in the dark as the first explosion rocked the facility. Somewhere below, the cage hybrids began to howl. Warren racked the rifle's lever. Time to return the favor. Chapter 8. The pack rises when experiments become revolution. The facility shook with another explosion, dust sifting down from the ceiling like grim snowfall. Warren pressed against the control room's shuddering walls, the rifle heavy in his hands. On the security monitors, half the screens had dissolved into static. The rest showed chaos. Black-clad soldiers shouting, doors buckling under unnatural force, and in one grisly shot, a blur of fur moving faster than anything natural should. Fang's ears twitched at the sound of approaching boots. He didn't growl. He didn't need to. The way his muscles coiled spoke louder than any warning. Luna nudged Warren's elbow toward a blinking red button under the console glass. Emergency release. Ghost limped to the window overlooking the arena. Below, the caged hybrids had gone silent. Their eyes, some amber, some eerily blue like ghosts, were all fixed upward, waiting. Warren didn't hesitate. He smashed the glass. The howling began. In the unshackling, the cages hissed open. The hybrids didn't bolt out in panic. They paced forward, deliberate, their movements synchronized like a single mind controlling many bodies. The smallest, a gray female with one milky eye, leaped onto the steel post in the center of the arena and bit down. The sound of snapping metal echoed through the facility. They're chewing through the chains, Warren realized. Not to escape, to arm themselves. Fang's muzzle wrinkled in what could only be called a smile. The soldier's mistake. The first tactical team breached the arena doors just as the hybrids melted into the shadows. The commander's voice crackled over their radios. Visual on subjects. A rookie lowered his rifle. Clear. The gray female landed on his back, not to maul, to steal. Her jaws closed around his grenade belt, and she was gone before his scream finished echoing. On the monitors, Warren watched the hybrids move with terrifying precision. Distraction. A black male howled, drawing fire. Sabotage. Two smaller wolves dragged tripwires between pipes. Theft. Luna, when had she left, reappeared with a soldier's key card clamped in her teeth. Ghost exhaled sharply through his nose, a wolf's laugh. The truth about Warren's cabin. Luna dropped the key card at Warren's feet. Clipped to it was a photo. His breath left him in a rush. A surveillance shot. Him splitting firewood last autumn. The timestamp matched the week Fang first appeared at his door. On the back, a handwritten note. Subject K09, Fang shows persistent affinity for this location. Hypothesis? Prior exposure? Or does the civilian possess the alpha calm gene we've been trying to synthesize? Warren's hands shook. They'd been watching him for years. Fang butted his head against Warren's thigh. Apology and acknowledgement in one. The escape. The facility's alarms reached a fever pitch. Containment breach in Sector 7, a voice shrieked over the intercom. They're herding us into the transmission cut off with a wet crunch. Luna growled low in her throat. The hybrids had done their job. Now it was their turn. Warren shouldered the rifle. We finished this. The pack moved as one. The emergency lights strobed red as Warren and the wolves advanced through the facility's shattered corridors. The air reeked of gunpowder and copper, the walls scarred with claw marks that ran too deep, too precise, like something had been testing its strength. Fang took point, his ears swiveling at every distant scream. Luna flanked Warren's right, her golden eyes reflecting the carnage. Ghost limped behind, his blue gaze fixed ahead with unnerving focus. The hybrids had scattered, executing their roles with chilling efficiency. This wasn't chaos. This was a coordinated strike. Then the intercom crackled to life. Mr. Pierce, the voice was calm, cultured, familiar. Warren froze. You've done remarkably well for a civilian, the voice continued, but this ends now. Come to Lab 0, alone. A metallic click echoed through the halls. The facility's blast doors began sealing shut, one by one, cutting off escape routes. Fangs snarled, muscles coiled to sprint. If you care about what happens to KO9 and the others, the voice added, you'll comply. A monitor flickered on, displaying a live feed, a steel crate shaking violently. Something inside was trying to break out. Luna let out a whine. Warren's grip tightened on the rifle. Who the hell are you? The screen split. A man in a lab coat appeared, his face partially obscured by shadow. Dr. Elias Voss, head of Project Cerberus. Then the camera panned left. Warren's blood turned to ice. A photograph of himself, taken 20 years ago in military uniform. Lab 0, the revelation. The door hissed open. Lab 0 wasn't a research facility. It was a shrine. Wall-to-wall screens displayed footage of wolves in combat zones. A black-furred hybrid dragging a wounded soldier to safety in Afghanistan. A gray female silently eliminating sentries in a jungle outpost. Fang, younger, leaner, standing guard over a fallen comrade. Military operations, all of them. Voss stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. You really don't remember, do you? Warren's pulse pounded in his temples. Remember what? Voss tapped a console. A file appeared on screen. Operation, Winterclaw subject, Captain Warren Pierce. Status, MIA, declared Kaya. You were the first successful hybrid, Voss said softly. Not man, not wolf, something better. The steel crate behind him rattled harder. And Fang wasn't sent to your cabin by accident. Voss smiled. He was coming home. The final test. The crate exploded open. A monster lunged out. A wolf the size of a grizzly, its eyes glowing red. Fang and Luna immediately positioned themselves between Warren and the beast, their lips peeled back in snarls. Voss adjusted his glasses. Meet K-01, our original alpha. Warren's vision swam. Memories flashed. Snow. Pain. Fang as a pup, licking his wounds. A promise? We'll come back for you. K-01 circled them, saliva dripping from steel-capped fangs. You were never just a survivalist, Warren, Voss said. You were the blueprint. Then the beast attacked. The beast that had once been K-01 moved with unnatural precision, its muscles coiling like steel springs beneath patchy fur. Warren's breath fogged in the frozen air of Lab Zero as the creature circled, its red eyes locking onto his with eerie recognition. Fang didn't hesitate. With a snarl that shook the lab's glass vials, the black-furred wolf launched himself at K-01. Their collision sent equipment crashing. Fang's teeth sank into the beast's shoulder. But K-01 barely flinched. It backhanded Fang with a paw the size of a dinner plate, sending him skidding across the floor. Fang! Warren roared, raising his rifle. Luna was faster. She darted in low, her jaws clamping onto K-01's hind leg. Ghost lunged for the throat. For a heartbeat, the three wolves held the monster at bay until K-01 shook them off like rag dolls. Voss watched from behind reinforced glass, his fingers dancing across a keyboard. Remarkable, isn't it? K-01 was the first successful military application, but you, Captain Pierce, you were always the breakthrough. Warren's vision swam. Flashes of memory. A snowfield, a black wolf pup whining over his bleeding body. Men in white coats dragging him away. The radio on Voss's desk crackled. Doctor, Voss, the explosives are set. Detonation in 5 minutes. Explosives. K-01 lunged again. Warren barely dodged, feeling the wind of its claws part the air where his throat had been. Fang scrambled up, limping but still snarling. Luna's golden eyes met Warren's, and in them he saw a plan. Either turning tide, Warren feinted left. K-01 took the bait. As the beast turned, Fang and Luna struck in perfect sync. Fang going high, Luna low. Ghost darted to the control panel, his glowing blue eyes fixed on the blinking detonator countdown. 3:45, 3:44. K-01 roared, swiping at Fang. This time, Warren was ready. He slammed the rifle butt into its exposed ribs, right where the fur thinned over old scar tissue. The beast howled in pain. Voss's smile faltered. Impossible. Only the original team knew about. The weak spot? Warren spat blood. Yeah, I remember. The memories came faster now. A covert ops team lost in a blizzard. A wolf pack saving them. The military deciding wolves made better soldiers than men. And Warren, their test subject, left for dead when his human side fought back. Fang had been there, had followed Warren's scent for years. K-01 charged again, but this time Warren didn't dodge. He dropped the rifle and howled. The sound that tore from his throat wasn't human. It wasn't wolf. It was something older. K-01 skidded to a halt, confused. Fang and Luna echoed the cry, then Ghost. Then, from the vents, the corridors, the shattered remains of the facility, dozens of answering howls rose. The hybrids had come. Voss's eyes widened as the pack flooded into Lab Zero, not as mindless beasts, but as a single unit. K-01 turned, snarling, but the hybrids didn't attack it. They surrounded Voss. "No!" the scientist gasped, fumbling for his detonator. "I'll bury us all!" Ghost moved like lightning. His jaws closed on Voss's wrist with a wet crunch. The detonator clattered to the floor. 0015, 0014. Warren grabbed Fang's scruff. "Out! Now!" The wolves ran as one. Hybrids, Fang, Luna, Ghost, streaming toward the emergency tunnels. Behind him, K-01 hesitated, then followed. The explosion blew the facility's roof off just as they reached the tree line. Warren watched the fireball light up the Alaskan dawn. Fang pressed warm against his side. K-01 stood apart, its red eyes dimming to amber. Then with a last glance at Warren, it vanished into the wild. 3 months later, Warren sat on his rebuilt cabin porch. The first snow of the season dusted the trees. A shadow moved at the tree line. Fang and Luna lifted their heads from where they dozed by the fire pit. Ghost, now healed, padded to Warren's side. The forest exhaled, and from the darkness, golden and blue eyes blinked back at them. The hybrids had come home. Warren smiled, scratching Ghost's ears. "Took you long enough." Somewhere in the distance, a single howl rose. Not a warning, not a hunt, a welcome. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales like this. Until next time, take care.